I was born on August 13, 1915. I was one of 6 children. The oldest was Ruth. I was the daughter of Bernice and Clarence Matlock. I was born at home. People back then didn't go to the hospital like they do now. In 1918, influenza and pneumonia broke out and had a huge impact on the whole country. When I was 3, my brother Robert and I were very sick. We had the flu. Robert died, and as my mother left to go to his funeral, she was told that I would probably be gone when she came home. My grandfather and my little cousin Helen and 2 other members of their family died of the flu. This was a time when women first started working. They were taking the jobs of men that had gone to war. My mom worked also, and she worked in the offices and dressing rooms of the Lowe's Palace Theater in Indianapolis, Indiana. And besides the movies, there was vaudeville. And the stars that came to town were ones that she got to know, and for many, many years, they were some of the very popular people from Hollywood. The first movie I saw was a silent film, Charlie Chaplin. It cost 10 cents to go to a theater. My dad would do anything until he could do better, but he'd do anything that he was honorable that took care of his family. He was a professional singer, and that he was very, very good, an Irish tenor. He wasn't one of these guys that said, "I've lost my job and I can't find another." He could tell the funniest stories. He says, "Help, help." He always said it kind of silly, Little kids, loved that. They'd laugh at it. It's kind of corny to older people, maybe. I'll never forget when my dad bought our first automobile. We'd had to walk every place, and now we could ride. And we'd put the top down and let our wind blow our hair, and just had a lot of fun with it, really. We just loved it. And we didn't have to walk so far to church anymore or any place. And my aunt and grandmother that lived up near Lebanon, of course that was a fur piece those days, see, because we hadn't been there on our own. So I think we'd had an uncle take us and bring us home, but now we could go on our own, up there and see them. And it was wonderful to have a car. I was about 5. I was in a runaway car. Well, my dad had me with him for some reason that day, and he parked his car. It was on a hill, and he parked his car into the curb. And I guess he didn't use the brake at all. And it's on a street I'd love to go back and take a picture of. It's very steep. And then when you get to the bottom of it, there's a viaduct there. But I must have touched the steering wheel or something, because I started going down the street. And I went a little ways, and there was a fellow coming along there, and he jumped on the running board like we had those days, and somehow he stopped it. I don't know how he did. But down at the bottom there, you go through, and at that time, Massachusetts Avenue was the busiest highway or street in Indianapolis and around, and came from, I believe it was Anderson, but cars were coming there all the time. But he got me before it got down there. I was a first grader, and she put this play on, and it was a beautiful play, but it had butterflies in it after the flowers all came, you know, their part. We had a certain place where we went out and sang and flapped our arms like butterfly wings, and all of them left the stage but me. And I kept staying there and kept staying there. They had to come and get me. The Great Depression impacted everyone. The well-to-do people lost what they had, and the poor people just got poorer. Saw people on the street, sitting on the street downtown, begging, you know, and I mean with their families with them. And it wasn't like, if you'd see that today, you'd think that they're sort of, you know, they hadn't done their job in growing up and weren't such nice people, but that was a sad part. You saw a lot of that. We had stamps, you know, for our ration, and sugar, they only could have sugar with a ration stamp. They got stamps, and then when they were out of them, too bad. And several books, you know, different kind of books. We came from a family that was a caring family, and we didn't have, but several of my mom's people had farms, and they naturally grew crops on that helped everybody, and they were very generous with us, and we had what we needed, and that took care of everything. In 1923 was the advent of radio, and 2 years later we got one. And when we came home from school, it was something, I tell you, it was really something. It was just like those people coming into your home. I went to one grade school on one side of town, the east side of town, and then we moved on the south side, and I went to what was the Garfield, it's a 35 school there, and I liked it a lot. At the other school, I think it's a good thing that I got changed, because I had, when I started should have started first grade, I did go to first grade, but 2 days later they put me in the second grade because I knew how to read and lots of things. And I was tickled to death when it was the third grade we moved out there to the Garfield School. It was a wonderful school. I went to Emmerich Manual Training High School, and at the old place near downtown. And I loved it, and I should have my report cards out here. And I graduated with above 90 average. And I was at that school, they had, for the girls, an organization that was an honorable organization, and you did certain things that they requested you to do, you know, for some kind of nice occasions. And they were called Masoma, and so I was a Masoma. And I graduated as a Masoma with above 90 average, and a scholarship to Butler. But can you believe that my family was not able, with all the rest of them, to send me because of transportation and the cost of transportation and books? And I didn't take that scholarship. I still have the letter that tells all about it. But people can't, this was depression then, see, and I mean real depression. I went down to IU with one of the older girls that were in the neighborhood, and I sat in on a class, and I was so interested in it, the professor noticed it, and he asked me, would I like to take that subject? And I said, oh, yes. I was wanting to go to college, but I just couldn't afford it. And he gave me some things to bring home, you know, and I couldn't be in the class naturally. But I brought them home and worked on them just like I had to. And so I always did want to go to college, even when I was in high school. And as I said, evidently they knew it. But later I went to what you call IU Extension, and I took some subjects then, and then I dropped it and got married. There was a dance at Manual Training High School where I went to high school, and I wanted a new dress to wear, and we were downtown, and Ellis Ayres is one of the oldest stores in Indianapolis, and this was on, of course, downtown. And I can remember standing in front of the window, and they had a real pretty dress, just appropriate. It wasn't fancy, it was just appropriate. And I said, oh, Mom, that's what I'd like to wear to the dance. And she said, well, I can make it. And she did make it just like it. She cut a pattern. She'd cut her own pattern, too, before she'd make the dress, you know. My cousin Martha was working for a doctor on the north side and lived with them, stayed with them. And she had asked me to come and meet with them, and then we were going out with another group that we all knew. And but Bill had never been there before, and that's when I met him. And from there on, he wanted to see more of me, and he came to see me, and we got to knowing each other real well, and got along real well. And after about a year, he asked me to marry him. It was about June when he asked me, and we were married July 24th. That was hurrying it up. And we had no reason to hurry it up, but he wanted it home, you know. He just asked me to marry him. Those times were, you know, so strange compared to now. Now, there might have been some that got down on their knee and proposed, I don't know. But we were going someplace, I think, on the way to a theater. And anyhow, it was on a date. And the one thing, his sister had told him to bring me over there. She wanted to meet me. And so she wrote me. See, that's the way they did it.